So the impeachment inquiry, at least the public hearings, supposedly are over, at least for now. And so now it's not a game of actually getting new testimony from people, it's a game of narratives, dueling narratives. What do people actually think about impeachment now that we're past these hearings? You've probably heard, oh, attention is going down, support for impeachment is going down. Just as an example, the Daily Caller, a bastion of truth and reason, said the tide is turning against Democrats on impeachment. And obviously, as we said yesterday on the show, Donald Trump has been just like tweeting what he wants. And here's the thing. Donald Trump is the best, depending on how you look at it, the best or the worst example of just say what you want to be a fact as if it was one, but that's becoming increasingly common. And for people on both sides, as much as I hate to use that term, of the impeachment thing, very often their commentary around what the people want and all of that is very much driven by what they want. They will say that the interest is going down or up just based on what they actually want. So I figured, just briefly, how about we actually look at the evidence rather than just saying what we want to be true? So let's take a look at the overall numbers for support or opposition to impeachment over time with an incredibly complicated graph that you're gonna see right here. Now, what's interesting is very, very consistent numbers. Going back to April of this year, up until the beginning of the Ukraine scandal, you effectively had support and opposition for impeachment that barely budged for month after month after month after month. And then a crazy thing happened. The Ukraine scandal, and it flipped, and suddenly more people supported impeachment than opposed it. Now, it is true that a week or two ago, those numbers briefly touched, as you can see on the far right of that. But now, in the past week, they've gone back effectively to where they have been since October. So here's the thing. Whichever storyline you're seeing in articles is like, man, people are super hyped up about this, or oh, people are turning against impeachment. The Democrats have really overplayed their hand. How is this gonna hurt them in the 2020 election? It's just not true, neither of those. Here's the truth. People feel pretty much what they felt for the past 2 months about impeachment. And nobody apparently has changed their minds, unless an equal number are switching places during the process. Now, look, if you're a strong supporter of impeaching Trump, that's not necessarily the best news in the world. You would like to think that all of these people coming forward in the public hearings and revealing what they know Donald Trump to have done vis-a-vis Joe Biden and Ukraine looks really bad for him. That should have shifted people more in support of impeachment. But here's the thing, we live in a hell world where nobody cares about anything and facts go to die. And so the fact that nobody changed their minds even as more and more evidence came out, that's just depressing, I guess, but not too distressing because we should be used to it at this point. Now, while we've now established that the numbers have been pretty consistent when it comes to support and opposition for impeachment over the past couple of months, what is really interesting, if you now take this and you compare it to what we know about support or opposition to impeachment over the course of literally the last half century. So here's the crazy thing. Polling has actually been done on how much people want to support impeachment for different presidents going back literally decades. Even if there wasn't an actual impeachment inquiry going forward, people do occasionally ask that question. So whether there was impeachment or not, let's take a look at a couple of the last presidents, see what people think. Way back in the 90s with Clinton in 1998, 29% wanted to impeach him, 67% didn't want to impeach him. So that is far more opposition to impeachment under Clinton, who it feels like, based on my memory, the impeachment inquiry of Clinton lasted for 64 years. So even after all that, it was still very low support. Very similar numbers actually for George W. Bush in 2006. Now he didn't face an actual impeachment process, but they polled it anyway, and that's what it looked like. Very consistent numbers in 2014 for Obama as well. Now, we would occasionally hear about how he needs to be impeached on places like Fox News, Breitbart, Drudge, all of that. But the numbers were pretty opposed to it. And now you see Trump with 50% supporting not only impeaching, but you can see in the beginning, impeaching and removing, and 43% saying not to impeach him. So if you hear someone say, sure, a lot of libs want to impeach Trump, but that's just partisanship. Everybody wants to impeach the other side when they're in power. You can see the numbers there. It's not true. It's actually almost constantly 30% say impeach, 70% say that they don't. Until Donald Trump, he is the historical aberration. And that makes sense because with George W. Bush, Obama, and Clinton, there were lots of concerns, some of which, especially when it comes into war crimes, should have been investigated, but you never had a super high profile scandal that it really made sense to tie to the constitutional imperative to impeach a president. That is just not the case with Donald Trump. People are not having a hard time following this story. Now that does not mean you're gonna get 60% or 70% or 80% support for impeaching him. That's just not the country that we live in. But you can look at those numbers and see that it's very different than the experience with the 3 presidents that came before him. And it's actually even worse than that, because we went back to 98 there. Let's jump way earlier and let's compare him to Nixon, a guy who also faced impeachment for very obvious crimes. This is a screenshot from an old New York Times showing 51% in poll favor impeachment, 46% back removal of Nixon. Now, 2 important facts there. One, the support for both impeachment and removal right now in that CNN poll for Donald Trump is actually 4 points higher than it was for Nixon back then. And importantly, you know when that headline ran? It was 11 days before Nixon left office. Now, I don't bring that up as some might on like the mainstream media and imply, ooh, Donald Trump might suddenly flee. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think anything will take him out of that White House, but perhaps even including him losing in 2020. So I don't think he's gonna leave. But this shows that not only is the support for impeachment far higher than it has been even in the past 2 decades when we've been a very polarized country, but it's more supportive than they had back with Nixon, a guy who was obviously guilty of horrible crimes. So look, I don't expect this to change your mind about whether he should be impeached or not, but I wanna arm you with the evidence you need that when you're seeing people's narratives that they're trying to push on you, whether from the right or from the center or from the left, here's the actual numbers. This is what the people really think. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.